Hi, my name is Derek Sanchez, and I'm the TrueTan Technical Sales Manager and Wine Chemist for Oak Solutions Group. I would like to talk to you about using our tannins. We have a full line of fermentation, aging, and finishing tannins, but today we're going to focus on fermentation. Here at Oak Solutions Group, we're constantly challenging our own ideas and assumptions on what we recommend and how to best use our products. We do that by doing trials across the globe. We work with wineries here in California and the United States, across Europe, in the Southern Hemisphere, in South America, South Africa, and Australia. This allows us to really learn how our products perform in different grapes from different climates and different winemaking practices and styles. We really see the full spectrum of winemaking. So I want to take this time with you now to share just a couple of the experiments that we've done in exploring our traditional fermentation tannin practices and theories. But first I want to talk to you about the benefits of using tannins, whether you're fermenting reds, whites, or pinks. First and probably foremost is oxidation control. Tannins can do this in a few different ways. The strongest of which is the inactivation of polyphenol oxidases, or enzymes like lactase caused by botrytis that can be the fastest way of browning in your whites and even your reds. To help battle this, you can add tannins at the crusher to help bind, precipitate, and inactivate these enzymes. In years of high rot, it's a good idea to hit it with a heavy dose of tannin. And even in years or cases where there's not so much, a small dose is still going to offer you some protection. Tannins can also help prevent oxidation through the consuming of dissolved oxygen, scavenging of superoxide radicals, and chelating iron to prevent the Fenton reaction. In addition to oxidation control is increased color. Tannins help stabilize red wine color through copigmentation. These pigments create a darker, longer lasting red that's more resistant to things like sulfur bleaching and oxidation. So even a few years down the line, your red wine's still going to maintain that beautiful deep ruby red color. If you're growing Cabernet, Cab Franc, Merlot, or any other varieties that come off a little green with too much bell pepper and green olive, adding some tannins at fermentation can also help eliminate or reduce those aromas. And finally, perhaps most importantly, is the sensory benefit of an improved structure. Maybe you have some wines that are lacking a little bit of mid-palate, don't have the length, or a little bitterness at the finish. Adding an appropriate amount of tannin before fermentation can help fill in those parts that are missing. Or on the other hand, wines that are super aggressive and tannic sometimes can benefit from a small addition to help round off and soften those harsh tannins. The TrueTan line is a blend of gallo tannin and elagitannins. These are coming 100% from oak. These hydrolyzable tannins are structurally very different than the native grape condensed tannins, and together with polymerization can give a very different mouthfeel and often really improve the structure of a wine. So now we'll get into a couple of the experiments we've done in the past to show you not only the benefit of using tannin in your fermentation, but the benefit of using TrueTan's hydrolyzable tannin. The first experiment we did was looking at the idea of sacrificial tannins. We tested two of our fermentation tannins in this trial, our FI, our fruit intensive, and the F2, the fermentation finishing. We also threw in a competitor tannin just to see what happened. The TrueTan recommended dose is 5 to 10 grams per hectoliter, and in this experiment we did 10 grams per hectoliter, which if you're not familiar is about 0.8 pounds per thousand gallons or 100 ppm. In the alternative tannin, we used the manufacturer's recommended rate of 30 grams per hectoliter, or about 2.5 pounds per thousand. So why is that? Why such a big difference in addition rate? There's really two answers to that. First is the high purity of our tannins. For example, our FI is about 90% tannins, and their F2 is around 80% tannins. That compared to the alternative tannin in this trial is somewhere around 20% tannins. So it's easy to see why such a high addition rate was needed. Secondly is the solubility of our tannins. Our gentle extraction process that uses only water and alcohol leaves any impurities that wouldn't dissolve in your wine out of our tannins. So that make sure what you add to the tank is staying in the tank and working and not falling out to the bottom and wasting your time and money. So back to the experiment. Here's a little bit of the data showing total pigment at day 3 compared to 1 year later. These time points give a pretty good indication of the long-term effects of each variable. we can see that both the F2 and Fi single dose variables were the best performers, both early on and after 1 year of aging. The Fi split dose seemed to perform rather well, but not quite as good as the single dose. The alternative tannin, at 3 times the dose rate, seemed to work decent early on, but doesn't stay in the wine long term. This is a good demonstration of the high purity and high solubility of our tannins. We see much of the same looking at total tannin and percent change from baseline, where the single dose of TrueTan seems to perform better than the split doses, both early on and down the road. Here's another look at comparing the single dose versus split dose with total tannin measured at time points day 1 at crush, day 3, the second day of addition, day 14, which is the end of fermentation, and 1 year later. I think this graph shows 2 things. 1, the effectiveness of making 1 addition instead of 2, and let's face it, it's just easier to make 1 addition. 1 less work order to write, 1 less time someone has to measure something out and make an addition, and anywhere we can save time during harvest is a good thing. The second thing this shows is the stability of our tannins over time. Not only does that early addition increase early on, but it maintains it lasting throughout the life of the wine. So from all of this, we can conclude that the TrueTan products are more efficient in both cost and effectiveness because of purity and high solubility. We can get better results at a lower dose rate. And that single dose is more effective and more convenient than the split dose. Let's not work harder if we don't have to. This trial helped to guide our recommendation of 5 to 10 grams per hectoliter as early as convenient. And I say as early as convenient because we're all dealing with logistical constraints, so maybe you can get it in at reception, at crush, or your first pump over. But the earlier you can get it in, the better. That is, unless you're using fermentation enzymes also. Which brings us to our next experiment, using enological enzymes with and without tannins. Tannins, much like they bind polyphenol oxidase enzymes, can also do the same with enological enzymes and inactivate them. So you want to make sure you're not adding tannins and enzymes at the same time. For this experiment, it was a commercial trial done with Cabernet Sauvignon with the objective to increase color. A pectinase and protease enzyme was added as part of the winery's protocol at 100 milliliters per ton at crush, and we wanted to see if adding tannins would increase the color. The tannin addition was added in a split dose. And I know you're thinking, Derek, didn't you just say to use tannin in a single dose? Yes, I did. But we also work with wineries and adapt trials to what they think is best. And in this case, a small tannin addition was made 24 hours after the enzyme as to not interfere with the enzyme action. The first addition was a small 3 grams per hectoliter of Fi, an effort to keep as much as the enzymes active as possible. And then a larger dose a couple days later of 5 grams per hectoliter of F2. Again, the objective of this trial was to increase color, so the analysis looked at extraction of color post-fermentation. We see the enzyme tannin combination variable showed an increase in both free and bound anthocyanins, as compared to just the enzyme treatment alone. We can expect much of this free anthocyanins to become co-pigmented and become part of that bound color later on during aging, leading to a deeper red and a longer lasting color. This trial helped us to recommend them adding tannins for a total of 8 grams per hectoliter sequentially after adding enzymes. I want to thank you very much for giving me your time. I hope we all learned something today, and I look forward to talking with each and every one of you. Thank you and take care.